Hello everybody, I'm Antonia and this is Noel and we are from Boxtail Soup Theatre Company and we are doing this vlog in a different location to normal. We are in our office today because we've been working on the computers a lot, getting our Gulliver Exploded project all ready and finished. We thought we would talk very quickly really today about our trip that we've had over the last couple of weeks, but we thought we'd talk most specifically about what it was like performing on a ship.
Yeah, so we are just going to keep it a quick one. Also, apologies that this is a little bit late, this vlog. In fact, since we've got back, it's quite disorienting being on the ship like that, because obviously there's not so much, it's harder to tell what day it is.
All the days blur into one, very, very much. And we had 6 days at sea, so 6 days where you couldn't see anything except for just the ocean and time, and then the hour was going. And
we had quite a few days. I think we had 4 days where every night the clocks went forward an hour.
Which was strange.
Yeah, so quite disorienting. And consequently, when we got back, we were still a bit kind of a little
boaty.
Yeah, a little out of it, a little boaty, a little uncertain of what day of the week it was, and so yeah, sort of things got on top of us slightly. So we're slightly late with this vlog, so apologies for that. We had a great time with it though, and the response to the show was absolutely fantastic, which was really, really nice. It was, as we've spoken about before, there's always challenges when we're taking shows overseas, and we've mentioned that before, the stuff about packing. And having to put the show into the trunks and kind of make sure it's all safe for travel. And obviously all of that applied here, but then there was a sort of unknown factor at the end of that. So when we arrived at the ship, we had to hand over our trunks once again. So we'd already kind of given them over at the airport, they'd gone on the plane. And then when we got to the port, again, we had to sort of hand over these trunks and say, well, okay, here, we've put the tags on them. When will we get them back? We'll get them back once we're on the ship. We weren't really sure whether they would be sent to the cabin or whether they'd be sent to the theatre or that kind of thing. So that was a sort of weird start to it.
Didn't make you feel great, did it? I think you were so pleased to have got them back off the plane.
That's it. I'm always so happy to see them again.
When somebody said that we had to give them over again, Noel was just kind of quietly fuming.
Can't I just take them on myself? I can see the ship is right there.
But they were very good, and they delivered them to us sort of just outside our cabin, where they then lived for a day or so until we did our technical rehearsal, and we finally we got to take them to the theatre then. And the theatre, I think we will put a picture up of the space and the set in the space.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put a little bit of the theatre up, because it was quite remarkable.
It was, and it was the first time, I believe, that they've had any kind of just completely straight play in that space. It was built, as far as I can understand from our technician, that it was built with the idea that it could be multi-purpose and could be used for theatre as well as lectures and the cinema. And it's also the largest planetarium at sea, I believe.
Yeah.
And so it is this crazy multi-purpose space, but they've actually never really done anything like what we do in there. So I think they were quite excited to have something like our shows, and it was a bit of an experiment, wasn't it? And
yeah, I mean, there were definitely some challenges, because it was, fortunately for us, we're used to working in quite a wide range of spaces, but there was a smallish stage. It was quite wide, but it wasn't very deep.
No.
There were no wings, no backstage.
It had this sort of shape at the front, didn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And Noel liked to try and fall off that
yeah, it was like the front of a hexagon.
Yeah.
It was that half of a hexagon. So you couldn't get backstage, you couldn't really get off and leave the stage. There were no wings or anything like that.
Which doesn't matter for us, as you would know if you've seen any of our shows. We don't ever leave the stage once we're on it, but nonetheless, it makes it tricky-ish.
Potentially, yeah. So,
and the lighting was limited.
Yeah, the lighting was a funny one, because the technicians there were, they're sort of keen to look at upgrading the stuff that they've got there. There was, I mean, actually the lighting, it turned out, looked absolutely great, and they were brilliant, the guys who worked with us on that, and they really got the most out of what we had there. So
yeah, because we were sort of gaily saying, well, it doesn't matter, we don't need to have all of these things, and they were brilliant. They were like, no, we must have everything.
Yeah,
and so they really
nice,
did.
yeah.
They made it look brilliant.
And I think once they saw kind of how invested we were, and they sort of went the extra mile and started refocusing things, moving things around, and fixing stuff up for us.
The other thing was that that I didn't expect, I don't know if you did, but the stage was carpeted.
Yeah.
So, which is unusual. It's quite a sort of thick carpet, which you would expect in a cinema space, because obviously I think they deliberately do that, and then obviously it's used for lectures as well, so it was perfect for that. But again, for us that was a little strange, and fortunately with Gulliver we actually don't really need to stick much to the floor. The only thing that we try not to use tape like that anymore where we can, for sort of environmental reasons, but so we had weights on things that needed weights, but then we have to stick the foot switch wires down.
Yeah.
But actually I was surprised at how well the gaffer tape stuck to that very strange
Yeah, it
carpet.
did all right. Yeah, it was weird.
It was
carpet,
strange.
It was like
and we
sort of
had to
furry.
be mic'd in there, which was definitely worth it, because it's not the kind of, it's very large, but also acoustically it didn't have its own acoustic.
Yeah,
You needed to have
it
a
was
microphone.
slightly odd at best, because you also have this, because it's used as a planetarium, they've got this kind of bowl-shaped screen that they can lower down over the centre section. But that does kind of a weird thing to the acoustic as well.
Yes, I think if you stood in the auditorium and stood in the middle of that dome, you probably would have a really lovely acoustic in the natural acoustic of that dome. But from the stage, you definitely needed a microphone. But they had excellent microphones, and it was nice because they were very good about making sure that we didn't have to wear anything on a costume or anything that would get in the way while we were performing. They were very considerate in that way.
The sound was great.
It was really good.
The sound was really nicely balanced, and everything sounded really good. So actually, it was quite fun to do it that way, in that kind of space. So I think it seats just over 400 or so in total.
Yeah, I was never quite sure.
Yeah, they kind of use different areas of seating for the different things that they do in there. So you're sort of not quite sure, because some seats are marked out for planetarium stuff only, and so on and so on. But we did 3 performances, and the first performance, the weird thing is that it's not like doing a show anywhere else where we have some sense of how many people to expect. Most of the time, we've got some insight into the ticket sales, whether that's because we see the box office reports ourselves, or whether we simply, we're told
we ask when we get there, or whatever it might be.
So you'll have an idea of how many people to expect. But in this instance, because it's available to any of the guests on board the ship.
And there are plenty of other things as well that are on at the same time, so you've got no idea whether anyone will actually turn up.
No, so there's a huge programme of events, of things that people could choose to go and do, and you have no indication of beforehand. It could have been no one, or it could have been everyone.
Yeah. But it was nice. It was very, very full. We had lovely audiences for all 3 shows, and one of the nicest things was that people came more than once. Which was such a sweet thing. I think people kind of, having enjoyed it, they thought, well, while they could take the opportunity, they just came again, and which was really lovely.
It was great, and I think that in a way, there's perhaps it was an audience who maybe. This is very unfair. Perhaps I'm making a huge generalisation, because it certainly won't be true of everybody on board. But perhaps for a certain proportion of the people on board, they maybe aren't exposed to fringe theatre quite so much. Their experience of theatre will be,
I think, would be more large scale sort of musicals.
Yeah.
And in fact, we did speak to quite a few people for whom they definitely said that was the case, and they'd never seen anything like what we do.
I think
before.
that's the point that I'm trying to get to, is that we had a lot of lovely comments about how much they enjoyed the show, but also a lot of really nice stuff saying, this is absolutely remarkable. We've never seen anything quite like this. We're going to come and see it again, which was lovely, to have people come back and see it again.
And the funny thing is, once you've done a show, we were told about this by a performer friend of ours who'd been on the ship before, that once you've done a show and you're wandering around just going about your rest of your day, you get stopped all the time by people who enjoyed the show, so you sort of feel like a bit of a celebrity. It's quite funny.
Yeah, it's weird. It's a sort of floating village, because you're all there together all the time, so you're then seeing the audience around all the time, because you go past the shops, or you go to the restaurant, and of course they're
And then we also did some workshops on board as well. So we did a workshop on puppetry, one on sort of storytelling, and one on design. And the lovely thing about those again was that we had repeat customers. We had people who came to all 3 and came to see the show, and there were quite a few people for whom that was the case, so you got to know them a little bit. So we definitely made a few lovely friends from all over the world. That was what was lovely too. There were some people who would never have been able to see us if we hadn't been on the ship, because they were from places where we just simply don't tour to.
Yeah,
yet.
from Australia, from America.
Yeah, and so that was really, really nice. I mean, it was. Oh, and one of the other things that was funny was when we did the technical rehearsal, and then we were trying to find where we could store the set, and we decided to pack it down only as far as we did when we were in Edinburgh, so leaving the masts up, but.
The storage space was pretty limited in there.
Yeah, but it was fine. It was a sort of cupboard, as it were, to the side of the stage, and it was obviously used by all sorts of people, because they have things like church services in there. So there were vestments hanging up, and there was a grand piano on a big platform thing that could be wheeled out. There were music stands, and I thought it was weird when I went in there, because the music stands were slightly in the way actually. But they were hanging. They were kind of tied round a rope against a wall, and I thought, that's really weird, why don't they just put them on the floor? And anyway, when we put our stuff in, and then the technician sort of gently said to us, oh, are you going to leave it like that? And we were like, oh well, yeah, I think it's fine. And he said, well, I wouldn't, you need to put a weight on that.
First he said, I'm going to get some ties then to tie it to the wall.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. And you were like, what?
In case it falls over. And my response was, what do you mean? It's not going to fall over. It's never fallen over before. It's got big wide feet. And then
then he said, "Oh, I will get a weight." And then, of course, the reason is because you don't ever know whether the ship is suddenly going to get more movement. And at that point, we really had experienced very little movement.
Yes, at that stage,
you sort of had no idea.
You couldn't really tell. You had to keep reminding yourself that you're on board a ship, because you're in this 400 odd seat theatre. You feel like you're at work, at a normal day's work in a normal theatre.
We sort of half expected to find the car outside and be driving off to the next place.
Yeah. So you constantly have these little reminders of going, oh yeah, of course, that's a safety
real
consideration
possibility that they could actually fall
about,
over. Yeah. And sure enough, then when we came to do the third performance, so the final one, there was quite a lot of movement in the ship at that point. And when we were setting up, we were all like, gosh, you can really feel it today. And then when you stood in the audience and looked at the set, you could see the set kind of gently tipping.
Yeah, so especially because there are a few things that hang off it. So you just see it, that very slight little bit of movement in them. Yeah.
And we did have to be, it was interesting, there were certain moments where I know that I changed my footing on the stage, so that I didn't feel like I was going to overbalance, because it was quite significant, that particular. In fact, I think that day was probably we felt the most movement in.
I think so. Yeah, and it's that's not to kind of say it was a huge amount of movement.
No.
But it's enough that if there are moments when you're stood in a slightly odd way,
stood
or
on
you're
one
balanced
foot,
on something,
you couldn't do the bit where you stand on one foot.
Yeah, exactly. Then it has an impact, and it has an impact generally, because you have a different sensation when you're.
It was quite fun. I mean, obviously for this show, particularly, it was quite appropriate in a way, you know. And it was funny. We kept sort of laughing about that, didn't we? The fact that we were doing a show about a voyage on a voyage, with moments on a boat. You know, it was good. So that's the experience that we had performing Gulliver on a giant ship.
So we thought that for this vlog we just keep it short and sweet, but again, like we said, because we're a bit late and because we've got lots of other stuff to do at the moment, and just focus on doing the show itself. Next week we will talk a little bit more about the other stuff that we were able to do.
Yeah, the kind of adventure of the whole voyage. But as always, if you are enjoying the vlogs, please do give us a thumbs up, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel. Welcome to the new subscribers. I actually haven't checked this time to see whether there even were any, but welcome to you if you are new. And if you, just tune in. Lost my thread there, but tune in next week for more information about our voyage on the Cunard cruise.
Sure. Thanks for watching.